Hiya, Wagwan, how you doing? I hope you're all keeping well in the circumstances. The circumstances don't probably need to explain what those are. But yeah, as you can see, I have decided to stop dyeing my roots that sort of mousy brown dark colour, because I just thought that letting the natural platinum shine through was so much more becoming. But yeah, it's about 10:15 here in the UK, and yeah, been a rather trying couple of days, I think, for a lot of us. You know, the announcement by the UK Prime Minister yesterday evening. 4 weeks, what was it, 4 more weeks to flatten the curve, save the NHS, save your nan, save the whale. Fuck knows. And they don't fucking know either. They don't know what the 4 weeks is for, which is the frustrating thing, which is the ridiculous, illogical thing that pisses any sane person off. If it was 4 weeks and there was some specific criteria, and think, okay, I know when these criteria are met, then that's the point when we get back to normal, but there isn't that. So there's no date. Well, there is a date in 4 weeks' time, but why 4 weeks if it's a deadly virus? Why 4 weeks? It just doesn't make any sense. It's not following the science. It's not following anything rational, as far as I can tell. Yeah, mugged off again. But who is surprised? Who is surprised that I think the things that we've witnessed from the media and on social media of what happened at the other spectacle over the weekend, the so-called G7 summit in Cornwall, where a veritable cunt fest of not so great and not very good descended on the southwest of England to chat shit about climate change and, I don't know, building back fuck knows what. Yeah, building something that no one actually wants. Their citizens certainly don't want, even if they don't know it yet. And when you think that the standout events of that sort of gathering would normally have been the fact that the President of the United States is clearly senile, or in early stages of Alzheimer's, or something is off key. I don't care. That's not a political statement at all. It's just an observation of that individual's behaviour. Biden doesn't seem to know what time of day it is. You think, God, will someone change his diaper, give him some tea and biscuits and settle him into bed, for Christ's sake? He makes Reagan look like an intellectual colossus. And it's actually really uncomfortable to watch, just on a human level. You think that person, that looks like elder abuse, that person should not be put up on the world stage to do the things that the President of the United States is supposed to do. But that wasn't the most shocking thing to come out of the G7 event. It was the very stark photographic evidence of the rank hypocrisy. One rule for me, another rule for thee. Where even the servants, the staff, had to comply with the ridiculous restrictions of wearing face coverings, but as soon as the photo opportunities had ended, after they'd done their stupid Zeke Heil elbow bump and face masks and stuff, they were all not socially distanced, not wearing masks, chatting away like, rather jolly dinner party, garden party. Yeah, things that obviously we, the plebs, are told that we, or directed that we may not do on, I don't know, on pain of fines, penalties, and ultimately prison sentences. Don't mind the light, it's probably just an electrical fault. Yeah, and something I also wanted to touch on the, since we're on the topic of G7, Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, as in the most senior official in the whole of the European Union. She's, I guess, an equivalent of a head of state in terms of the European Union. She was I think Belgian and or German perhaps, and she was certainly a politician in whatever European country she's from. But interestingly, and I think relevantly, she is descended from a long line of slave owners. As in, she is the ultimate actual embodiment of white privilege, one of the most clear and striking embodiments that you could ever find of such a concept. And she is, the most senior civil servant in the EU, which, I mean, this isn't hidden information. This is on her Wikipedia page. She's descended from a family on her, this is her paternal grandparents, I believe, a family called the Ladsons, who were very, very big slave owners in the US. And at the time of abolition, they owned something in the region of 200 slaves. And she's also descended from Joseph Ragg, who, if you know your British history, you will know was one of the founders of the transatlantic slave trade. So she's got some pedigree, this lady, in that regard. Is that ever mentioned? Has anyone ever heard that mentioned in the context of, white privilege discussions, Black Lives Matter, smashing statues, and the critical race theory that is a much bigger thing in the USA, in their schools and colleges, but is certainly being pumped into schools, universities, workplaces in the United Kingdom. I know from my own experience that there's training is done in a lot of workplaces to educate staff as to white privilege and to help us whiteys understand the basis of our privilege and why we should be constantly checking ourselves and making more effort to divest ourselves of some of it, I suppose. People who have actually unquestionably benefited as the wealth from that awful trade that her family only 3-4 generations ago participated in to a very prolific extent, that will be echoed down through the ages. There'll be family trusts set up, there'll be all the benefits that will accrue to future generations of those families, built on the back of slavery, built on the back of white folk earning money on the backs of black folk solely because they are white folk and the slaves were black. They were, I think if there's a clearer case of white privilege, I'd love to hear it, but I don't think there is. And there is absolute radio silence on that. Absolute radio silence. And that's not to say that, the sins of the father should be visited on the sons, daughters, whatever. Of course not. You don't hold future generations liable for things that previous generations have done. That's ridiculous, and I don't even see how you begin to how that even begins to work in practice. But the fact that nobody has even mentioned this. No one has even sort of, well, Ursula, given your extreme white privilege, what are you doing? What are you doing to maybe share some of that around with, I don't know, people of colour in the European Union who perhaps have not had the opportunities, who certainly will not have had the opportunities that you've had? How are you giving something back? How do you approach your own white privilege, which in your case is very real, as opposed to in the case of most ordinary people, they are no more privileged than anyone else. And if you're white and working class, then white working class and male especially, then you probably have fewer opportunities on average. And obviously individuals can make their own opportunities. We all have that within us to better ourselves, to be better than the generations before, to make whatever we want to make of our lives. And yeah, and it really brought home to me just the innate cowardice, absolute cowardice of things like Black Lives Matter, things like critical race theory, things like white privilege, because what it ultimately aims to do is to make ordinary people feel bad about themselves and to make them feel responsible for things that they have absolutely no control over, for the bigger societal macro factors that, Steve and Janice from Sevenoaks just have absolutely no fucking control over. No more control than anyone else, while excusing or sort of cutting out of that picture the people who are more responsible, who actually do bear more of a burden, if indeed there be a burden to bear. It is borne by people like Ursula von der Leyen, I would say, not by Steve and Janice from Sevenoaks, not by the likes of not by the likes of anyone I know, actually. They're just folk getting on with their lives who have had opportunities or not, and have they've had no particularly special treatment by virtue of their whiteness. But yeah, so that kind of that's always been something that's bugged me, always been something like that. Always that sort of thing has just made me deeply, deeply suspicious of all of these movements, all of these theories, all of these bandwagons that our great and glorious leaders have been very quick to jump on. And I think their eagerness to jump on those bandwagons is in part because, in very large part, because it deflects responsibility away from them. They can say that it's something that is borne by all white people equally, and it's not. It's not. A bit like, responsibility for COVID restrictions being continuing to be imposed. It's your fault for not wearing a mask. It's your fault for not doing... No, it fucking isn't. No, it fucking isn't. It's not my fault for not wearing a mask. It's not my fault for wanting a normal life. It's not my fault for not wanting my children's education to be disrupted. It is a cowardly, cowardly government who does not have the sense of proportion and perspective to make decisions based on evidence, based on a proper appreciation of risk. And this absolutely fucking crackers approach to risk that seems to be no risk is acceptable. Well, I don't know how any of them have got through life this far with that attitude. Since when has there been zero risk? Since when has there been negligible risk? There's risks inherent in all things. And at what point does saving the NHS tip into a realisation that if the NHS requires this much mollycoddling, which I don't think it actually does, but if it does, is it not fucking unfit for purpose? Really? It is there to provide healthcare to people. It's not there to be cosseted in cotton wool and not touched and not used and only to service people who may or may not have COVID. Sorry, I'm preaching to the choir. Preaching to the fucking choir, but yeah, it does make you wonder. Makes me wonder whether I've fallen through the looking glass, and yeah, will we ever get back to the other side of the looking glass? I don't know, but I wouldn't say I'm. Can you be neither optimistic nor pessimistic, or is that just sitting on the fence? I don't know. I don't know. I'm feeling neither one thing nor the other, to be perfectly honest. I don't feel down. I feel mildly, well, over the weekend I was feeling increasingly pissed off and irritated to the extent that I just had to stop looking at things like Twitter and stop looking at social media, because it was just, the lunatics have well and truly taken over in the case of Biden, and if they're not genuinely mentally incapacitated, then they are just cynical and evil. Cynical, evil and entitled. But looking forwards, summer solstice over the weekend, and a group of friends and I are going to be in a field in Essex celebrating, and I'm looking forward to that. And that may be, I don't know, that may be the last gathering for a wee while. I don't know, but I'm going to enjoy that, and I'm going to, I like this time of year. I like the solstice, and I'm not celebrating it where I would like to, which would be in Avebury, but a field in Essex is good enough with a nice bunch of people. So small things, and going forward, chin down, hands up, keep on the front foot, unless you judge it right to move on to the back foot, to give yourself space to move forward. So basically, be a good boxer. Don't be a shit boxer like fucking Jake Paul. Not a boxer. A YouTube cunt who fights mugs and exhibition fights with someone who could have taken his head off if he'd wanted to. But no, be a Sugar Ray Leonard, be a marvellous Marvin Hagler. Keep fighting, keep smiling, keep well. May your gods go with you. See you soon. Bye-bye.